Nurses of Reddit, what's the most entertaining thing someone has said coming off of anesthesia? ER tech here. We often do conscious sedations with ketamine to realign broken bones. I had a 10-year-old girl who snapped her arm on the trampoline. When she was coming out of the ketamine slumber, she asked why she saw God. Little freaky. She also snarfed down 4 pea-band sandwiches after, and I was impressed. The best has to be the sledding accident kid who snapped his tibia. When he was coming out of the ketamine sleep, he kept begging us not to tell his mom he smoked weed for the first time the day before. His mom was in the room while this was taking place. Not a nurse. My wife woke up from a surgery and started pointing into the middle of the room and in a soft voice said, "Duck you. Duck you and you. What's that smell?" She then looked over at me and says, "When did you get here, ya shat lol." She doesn't cuss much, so I got a good laugh out of it. I had a male patient who as he woke up mumbled, "I'm not pregnant." Patient here with a great story nonetheless. When I got my wisdom teeth removed, I apparently had a religious experience. I'm agnostic. I told my mom, who was with me, that I saw people walking on water. Next, I kept telling her that I saw Jesus. Apparently, when the female nurse came back into the room, I did the Catholic sign of the cross and whispered to my mom, "That's him. That's Jesus." The nurse lost her it. When I got my wisdom teeth out, the nurse was trying to wake me up and said, "Okay, it's time to open your eyes. Can you open your eyes for me?" I said, "Say please." He said please very nicely, and I opened my mouth as wide as I could. Did a short stint in recovery as part of my graduate program. I got proposed to a couple of times. Same guy would walk past me in the corridor a day later and not recognize me. A man asked me if his body parts still belong to him, and I still think about it, LMAO. I was coming out of anesthesia and the nurses in the recovery room were all poking fun at each other about which Hogwarts house they would be in. Me, according to my ex-wife, I'm a house elf. Not a nurse, but my twin sister started speaking fluent Spanish to my mom after she woke up from getting her wisdom teeth removed. We're half Puerto Rican on our mom's side, so we've grown up hearing Spanish, but neither of us had ever carried a fluent conversation with her in it. But apparently my doped up sister could. We had to slide board a patient from the stretcher to his bed after an endoscopy. You put a board between bed and stretcher and then grab patient and slide them over to bed with sheet underneath them. My patient screamed "WEEE" and then proceeded to tell us that these are the best drugs ever and that it felt like the 60s again. Woke up thinking I'd had sex with my doctor and apologized to him for how bad it was. I work in the OR. Funniest was a guy quickly sat straight up after extubation. We're all standing around him making sure he doesn't try to jump off the table. He looks at me and then slowly gives me double finger guns. Turns his head to another staff member and slowly gives them finger guns. Didn't say a word, just finger guns. A lot of people wake up really crazy. They start swinging or just get really restless on a narrower bed. It's nice when people wake up sleepy and I'll just bundle them up with blankies and roll out. My brother got his wisdom teeth out not too long ago. When he woke up, he started laughing a lot. Like he wasn't laughing super hard, but he was laughing for super long and it almost sounded monotone. After a couple minutes of just flatline laughter, he stopped and mumbled chicken like it's what he was laughing at. Don't know why, but it stopped him from laughing for a bit. Me. Coming out of it at the dentist's office. Me. You have to save them. Dentist. Save who? Me. The owls. Dentist. What owls? Me. The owls trapped inside the gas machine. They were hooting. I could hear them. You have to save them. I came out of it in the middle of a conversation with Gandalf. I was trying to sell him Tupperware. Not a nurse, but I had dental surgery at a hospital in Bangkok a few years ago. I had pretty much come out of anesthesia and was just waiting for the doctor and discharge stuff. There was this giant Aussie guy also in recovery and he kept trying to sneak away. Like he'd look around, grab his IV pole, and tiptoe toward the exit. The nurses were just kind of herding him around the room back to his bed. Then he'd do the same thing again. The nurse with me asked if I wanted the curtains closed and I was like, hell no. I just had major oral surgery and this is funny. So she and I sat there for nearly 20 minutes watching his shenanigans. Nurses have patience like saints, I swear. Not a nurse, but was in charge of my sister after she got her wisdom teeth out. Got her in the car and she was bawling. Wouldn't stop crying and trying to put her fingers in her mouth. Mind you, she was 20 at the time. I got her back to my apartment, and she's having a hard time staying upright. So I'm helping support her as we walk up to the door. She's still crying, but is now trying to do a heel click. We almost fall over. My neighbor sees us and runs over to help open my door. We get her inside. She then proceeds to spend another hour crying about how she wants to write a Harry Potter Pride and Prejudice crossover ballet, in which she would play Dumbledore, Lizzie Bennet, and Emma Darcy herself. I then asked her who I would play. She said Hedwig and Emma Collins. That's when it stopped being entertaining. Edit. Thank you for my first Reddit award. When I was in high school I was just getting put under and feeling loopy for a wisdom teeth operation, and the nurse was making small talk with me and told me she graduated from the same high school I went to and was on the dance team, and I told her no you weren't. You have to be pretty to be on the dance team right before blacking out. I think about this sometimes before I go to sleep at night. Nurse, I am so sorry to do you like that when you were just doing your job. Also not a nurse, but I had ankle surgery last year. They gave me animal crackers after, and I remember being really upset that I didn't realize until the last cracker that I forgot to look at the animals and appreciate each one. Guy wakes up in the recovery room after left knee replacement surgery and starts talking with his wife. Well, at least I still have 2 good knees. Oh honey, she replied. You just had knee surg. He interrupts in a loud voice. My right knee and my weenie. I once told the nurses to stop. I wasn't asleep yet. I wasn't ready. They laughed and said they were done. Another time I came out saying sometimes you feel like a nut. Sometimes you don't. Almond Joy has nuts, mounds don't. No clue why I was singing this, but the nurses thought I was hilarious and let family know this happened. A friend of mine woke up after surgery and stated I want to eat a Christmas tree. Was a student nurse for 2 semesters. On a placement in a post-op ward, an old guy had a reaction to the aesthetic. Thought he was back in the Korean War. Kept trying to get out of bed to help his mates. The 2 nurses couldn't figure out how to stop him. They called security. Meanwhile, I walked up and in my most official sounding voice said to the nurse I was partnered with, stand down lieutenant. I'll take over from here. She looked confused but moved aside. I said to him, soldier, you took some shrapnel. You need to rest and recover. Now stand down or I'll have you court-martialed for insubordination. Understood? He looked at me for a second, looked around, replied nice and loud yes mom, and went back to bed. Not anesthesia but post-op in ICU. PT had brain surgery for a neuroma. He had a brain drain in but otherwise was fine. Me. Hi sir, I have your dinner. Do you need help? PT. No. I can do it. What is it? Me. White fish. PT. Ugh. Me. It's brain food. PT. If that's the case I need a whale. I laughed for 2 hours after that. At the dentist I woke up like a shot from anesthesia. Got up and ran through the office. Dental assistants chasing me. I ran to the washroom, still drugged up. Looked into the mirror and while pawing my numb face said I need to make sure I don't look like Joan Rivers. It wasn't something he said, but I had a patient in his 50s attempt to motorboat his wife when she came to pick him up. She was mortified, and I managed to keep a straight face while giving her all his post-op instructions. Middle-aged woman with obvious surgical enhancements coming off of anesthesia from a diagnostic procedure. I was listening to her lungs with my stethoscope and told her alright, nice big breaths. She said thanks, I just got them done. It was so hard to compose myself, haha, now I say deep breaths. 15-year was waking up and talking more and trying to get out of bed before he was ready. Bud, where are you going? I've got to go to my locker. Buddy, you're in the hospital. You can't go to your locker right now. So where are you trying to go? Serious expression, comma the F up year. Not a nurse, but after I got my wisdom teeth out I was convinced I was Clark Kent and kept taking my glasses off and mumbling I'm Superman. And then I cried when they told me they were going to put my teeth in the incinerator because for some reason drugged me thought they meant all my teeth. Did you fancy up my ID a little bit? Said to me, the post-op RN, after patient's vasectomy. Not a nurse, but I underwent a procedure and had to be put under anesthesia, according to my dad, who was in the room. The doctor asked me how I was feeling and I said to him, I feel like it. Can I go back to hell? Not really funny I guess, but it was funny at the time. Obligatory, not a nurse, but a friend of mine said that one of her patients was convinced he was a burrito and needed her to sprinkle cilantro on him. Edit. OMG, my first gold. Thank you. Not a nurse, but I woke up from surgery pissed because the anesthesiologist told me he was just giving me oxygen, but then next thing I knew I woke up in post-op. I told the nurse that it lied to me and she just said okay and went to get my parents, lol. Patient here went on a long rant about how Bugs Bunny appeared in my dreams and told me lies. No idea how my brain came up with that one. Kinda long, sorry. I worked in an ER and we had a patient, guy about 18-20 years old, who had a spontaneous pneumothorax, collapsed lung. Not quite as bad as it sounds. He basically had a small area of air between his lung and chest wall. We had to put in a small chest tube to remove the air. We did art moderate sedation, basically kinda knock him out but not put him completely under. One of the meds used was Versed, which has an amnesic effect, so they don't remember anything. Procedure is done and I'm monitoring him when he starts coming around. He looks at me and asks, so, when are we going to do this thing? I said, we're already done, look at your chest, had a drain dressing in place. He looks down, then looks at me and says, dude, how do you do that? Maybe not the best story here, but it happened 20+ years ago and it still makes me laugh. All the level 1, general anesthesia, patients were sneezing and in no pain. I was walking by and sneezed. I was almost to the door and heard a subdued voice say, bless you. Never did figure out which patient said it, but it was so sweet. Another time it was a co-worker who'd had surgery, and when I went to check on them, they wailed, I just want everyone to like me. It was funny as hell because it was a doc who used to yell a lot. Had my appendix out and according to my wife the doctor came around with a bunch of student doctors and pulled my gown to the side to show the keyhole scars. Now the bottom one is below the pants line and I wasn't wearing underwear and apparently I said "Otter, don't act like you're not impressed," then closed my eyes. They all had a good laugh. My wife was mortified and I was sound asleep. Still hear about it from her almost 10 years later. Female patient after C-section asking me how many chickens she had, because she had beef with pig. Her husband translated later, how much the baby weighed, because I have a bet with hubby. Answering as someone coming off of anesthesia while in the middle of surgery, I tried a dog biscuit too. In response to my surgeon telling his colleague how he had to eat a dog biscuit while pledging. Another time I squeaked like a dolphin while in the middle of surgery. Kinda weird, I remember doing it and my surgeon was freaked out that I knew I did it. After my spinal surgery I was talking about how excited I was that Voldemort wanted to marry me. Backstory, my grandmother desperately needed a hip replacement. She didn't want the surgery, but it had reached the point where my grandfather couldn't care for her unless she got it, and had to give her the ultimatum to either have the surgery or move into assisted living, something she absolutely did not want. She had some onset of dementia, so everyone was extremely worried about what the anesthesia would do to her mental condition. After surgery, they were asking her questions to see if the anesthesia had affected her cognitive functions. My grandfather asked, "Do you know who I am?" And her response was, "You're the dirty rotten little so and so who did this to me," as she pointed at her leg. Oh. She had also named both her stuffed cat and her cane George. Anyone else she didn't immediately recognize by name while the anesthesia wore off was also dubbed George. There is nobody in our family named George. Not a nurse, but after her hip surgery my grandma thought she was fighting in the War of 1812. My wife is a dentist. One of her patients started moaning loudly, or the typical moans and groans. I mean like the really good six moaning. It was loud enough that half the clinic heard, including the waiting area. Anesthesia hits my family pretty hard. Low vitals. Takes longer to wake up. It can be pretty scary for my mom, who is usually the caretaker. Last winter I had an endoscopy and wasn't waking up. It took a while for me to gain awareness after I did arise. And the first thing I remember is asking my mom for pancakes. She responded with a worried "I know. We'll get pancakes later once you're up to it." I was convinced that she had been reading my mind and was very concerned about her new psychic abilities until they told me I'd been awake for about 30 minutes and had asked for pancakes at least 10 times before I regained awareness. I don't remember this, but apparently when I woke up from getting my wisdom teeth removed, I wanted to get the teeth back. I was pretty adamant about it, but the dentist compromised by letting me take a picture of them on my phone. I was looking at my phone and saw the picture and I was like, "What's this?" And he explained what had happened. I was waking up from a tube removal due to an ectopic pregnancy, and I remember hearing the two nurses in recovery giggling and tittering about. I know I said something but I don't remember what. But they both came right over, and when I opened my eyes they were both leaning over me asking how I was doing. I told them I was fine and asked if surgery went well. They said it did. I didn't have my glasses but the clock was right in front of me. I said, "Good lord. Is it really almost 1 AM? They said yes and I closed my eyes. I could still hear them and chatted with them but my eyelids were super heavy. I did ask why they weren't pushing me to wake up and one said, "Oh, honey, you're the only one here. Take your time." About 30 minutes later I was being wheeled back to my room on my bed and asked if my husband was back yet. He had to leave to go finish a final for his degree and he passed with flying colors lol. And they said yep, he's right over there, and pointed to my left. I flung my head to the left and yelled "Hey toots," and fell back asleep. This was the weirdest thing a nurse said to me as I was coming off of anesthesia. I had a baby that died. I had 4 children but only 3 of them lived. I was rushed into the hospital with extreme pain and tons of internal bleeding, and then they found out I had an ectopic pregnancy that had ruptured my fallopian tube. Which was a strange surprise. I had barely had any encounter resembling the kinds that get you prenantosa, but I guess one crazy sperm managed to get up my tubes despite the lack of reproductive behavior, so I hadn't even missed a period or anything. They zoomed me into surgery and gave me lots of drugs. It was a huge relief to have the emergency resolved, and I didn't really actually think of myself as pregnant with a baby. I mostly just thought I am dying. Holy it. They actually know what the duck is wrong with me and they are gonna fix it with drugs and medicine and it. Hallelujah. I'm not going to die. Post surgery I woke up quite disoriented and alone with a very kind old nurse woman who promptly told me she once lost a baby. I was very confused for a long while. I really hadn't even processed that I had been pregnant or lost a baby, so I didn't realize she was trying to comfort me by sharing a shared loss. I just thought that this nurse decided to randomly tell me her baby died as I woke up alone in a room with her and I was like, "AWW, that's terrible. You poor stranger lady. I'm so sorry your baby is dead. Why are you telling me this?" But in retrospect, how sweet that she tried to be kind. Thanks, nurse lady. Drink this juice. Young me. Oh fine. Drinks it. Falls asleep in under a minute. Me after surgery. "Mum, why are you laughing? You told the nurse that she was a naughty girl and that you would call dad to punch her." Not a nurse but my wife, who I have been married to for over a year, came out of oral surgery last week and decided that was when she was going to tell her mom that she was gay. She said, "Kaylin, I was at the wedding." Gave me a huge laugh. "I'm not the nurse. I'm the person," I said. The nurse had beautiful eyes. Also I saw her with 4 eyes due to hallucinating. Not the nurse. The patient. I have not been given enough gas for the first time. I was still numb. Just very vaguely conscious. A nurse reported me for starting to scream anti-Semitic slurs at my surgeon during SIG electrode implanting. Mind you, from my point of view it was putting the mask on, taking 3 or 4 drags, wake up some seconds later in a different room, screaming anti-Semitic slurs at a Jewish man in a Jewish country with about a third of your skull fully exposed and with holes in it is not a good idea. Thankfully, he was kind enough to not lobotomize me. Not a nurse. But when my ex woke up from having his wisdom teeth removed, he started explaining a meme to the dentist assistant. She later asked me why my ex was giggling that Jews can't melt steel beams. At that point I just lost it. 1. Apologies for the format first time poster. 2. Not a nurse but it's still a funny story. My brother was coming off of anesthesia after getting a tube down his throat. He has this issue with dairy where his throat swells and it's hard for him to swallow things. And he was talking to my mom before saying, "Mom, you're an asshole." She asked him why and he said, "You woke me up from the best nap ever." Sorry if it's not that funny but I got a good chuckle out of hearing this story. I came out of anesthesia to a nurse shoving cookies into my mouth telling me I need to eat, except I couldn't remember how to chew. So my mouth is full of soggy cookies and I can't chew or talk, so I just grunted like a child at her and shook my head away from her hand. She told my mother, a nurse practitioner and midwife, that I act really childish. "Oh you're airplaning me a cookie when I'm not able to communicate to you that I don't want it." I was briefly put under for endoscopy. When I came to, I cried and my nurse was so sweet to me. I kept asking if I died and then thanked her for not letting me die, and she was so sweet and legit held me for a minute. When my brother got home after his wisdom teeth, he was on the couch in the TV room laughing, and when we asked what he was laughing, he said that this was the funniest show ever. The TV wasn't on. When they first stood me up after I got my wisdom teeth removed, I farted and giggled. My mom recorded me after my shoulder surgery. Waking up I was screaming I need to go to the gym to lift, and dreaming of gyros meat for dinner. But I really wanted to lift. Couldn't do it for the next 4 months. When I had my tonsils taken out a few years ago, I apparently woke up insisting that they also took out my uvula and they better put it back before I can get up. So I am a nurse, but my favorite coming out of anesthesia story was my husband's. I went back to see him in recovery and he was super eager to leave and was trying to remember where he parked, and I said, "Don't worry babe, I'll bring the car around. You know where the car is." I drove us here." "You drove us here? Oh my god, you drove us here? Thank you. You're welcome, I was happy to do it." "Oh my god, you drove us here. Oh wow." He was close to tears at this point. I took him to lunch after and he nodded off while staring intently at a novelty salt shaker. My favorite while I was working was a man who woke up from a double great toe amputation and was super worked up about how he was going to wear flip-flops until I suggested he try out slides instead. Not a nurse but the patient. I went under to get my tonsils and adenoids removed. After, when I woke up I was loopy and I said, "Can I only eat ice cream for a week?" The nurses in recovery started laughing. I regretted saying that later cause I was in 5x worse pain and the doctor said I would probably be if I didn't say that right after I woke up.